Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hey Sid, I'm good, doing good, man. How are you?
I'm wonderful. What caught my special attention to you as a leader was your LinkedIn post that you published, I think, 2 years ago.
The longer interview?
Yes, yes. The post about how you almost went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And I've been following you before, but this LinkedIn post you wrote really caught my attention as an open leader, and you admitted certain things that I've never thought other people would ever admit. And here's a excerpt that especially caught my mind and is always in my mind, very bright. I'd like to read a passage from your LinkedIn post. This is a post where you are recalling an event in September 2018. You wrote, I started having lucid suicidal thoughts while waiting my turn in the launch room to pitch. Why would I stand up again to pitch while our company had no money, no main product? Our team was struggling to keep up with future demand while warding off bugs. I was living alone in San Francisco. My peers were getting funded, and I could see no hope in sight. I was on the phone with my psychiatrist often, changing prescriptions, sleeping pills, because nothing was working. I could not go to bed. No amount of melatonin would work.
Yep.
I dreaded going to bed nightly as it just wasn't happening. I went on 3+ hour bike rides to exhaust myself, which did not work to help me get to sleep. It also did not help that on one of them I started crying. I thought this was so powerful. You're like so interesting and showed your vulnerability. And after that, I started reading everything you wrote. I was curious, was this the lowest point for you in Blackthorn's history?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was awful. It
Yeah,
was it was really hard. The only time I've ever really stressed is when we've gotten tight on money. And anybody that's ever started a company, I mean, I don't know anyone that's ever not had some issue facing some payroll issue. I mean, it always comes down to payroll. I mean, even if you listen to Elon Musk stuff on like Tesla and SpaceX, it always came down to payroll when there was an issue. You know, when's the next payroll going to run? Are you going to miss it? You know, for us, it was a few
mm,
things where I had a team we had to pay. Obviously, people have that, but then I had no idea what we were doing. I didn't really know how we were going to make money. The model didn't work yet. So not
mm,
only, it's not like I was sitting on the recipe to make gold and we didn't know how to produce it yet. I had no idea about really anything. So I particularly felt like a fraud. So each week I got up and pitched
mm,
the investors, I was pitching something different. Like one week I pitched events, one week I pitched mobile payments, one week I pitched like our whole stack. And I tried to listen to what people were saying, and everybody was so confused about what they wanted to do. And when I pitched events, it seemed to ring true the most for people, but it was the least developed product. So we had to figure out a way to buy enough time in order to get there. But yeah, it was brutal. It was a really, really, really rough time. I felt very, very lonely.
So the key issue for you was didn't know how you would pay your employees, right? They trusted you, they're giving you their time, and they're coming into work, but last day of the month came, you weren't sure if you could give them their paycheck.
Yeah, it's for me, it's one of these questions that doesn't have a good answer. So imagine that you have a month of money left, and you have some employees that have no kids and they're a bit younger, where like this is not like a consistent thing, but generally if you're younger, you have like less overhanging expenses or something. You don't necessarily have a mortgage payment. You're not necessarily paying for a family member, or you don't have like dependents or something like this, right? But some people, they have families and they'll have kids, or maybe their significant other isn't working and they're like the sole provider, and maybe they don't have a lot of savings, and that you may not have the money to pay for payroll. And if you tell them all this, will they leave? And all of a sudden, this team of like seven you have left, if one or two critical people leave, who are the only people that know about what it is that you're doing, does your company just collapse? Do you not tell them so that they keep going, but then you risk like missing the payroll, and then you become like a fraud ass, right? Like
Mm.
you're looking at this like, are you a bad person for saying nothing, or should you say something? So there's a concept of a type of person who joins a startup where they kind of inherently know there's some risk to it. I would share like some financial stuff with people, but as it got like really, really, really close and terrible, I wasn't lying. I just wasn't volunteering. I stopped like
Mm.
saying what was going on. And if somebody asked, I would tell them, but it just never got to that point. So I mean, in hindsight, if I had to do it again, I don't know what I would have done differently. Like it feels like I was lying to them by not telling them we were almost dead, but I don't know what the flip side would have been. You know, if I said, you know, we have a month of money left. If we don't do this, then we're dead. What would have happened if I had like one or two key devs left that were the only people that knew how to operate something? And I think this is a problem that a lot of founders face because, you know, we're not like building something that's going to drastically change the world, right? This isn't like some life or death crazy thing, but I've been working on this thing for years. And if it collapses, I think the reason I was having these suicidal thoughts is because it kind of felt like death. And that might seem like a bit like outrageous or extreme or something, because, you know, like it's just like a startup company. But to me, it wasn't. It was like it was my baby, my livelihood, you know? It's really a difficult topic. I don't know what the right or wrong answer behind all that would be.
Did you miss payroll?
We didn't, if you look at it from a binary perspective, no. But if you look at it like closely, like we sort of did. So for example, sales, like you can
Ah,
delay commissions, for example,
got
right?
it,
Like I
got it.
wouldn't do anything without talking to someone, right? You like delay commissions. Or I asked everyone if they would take voluntary pay cuts, and 3 or 4 people out of 7 or 8 took voluntary pay cuts. And I said, like, you know, I'll try to pay you back at a later date, but minimally I can give you more stock options, right? So those stock options at the time, like we were going out of business, like seemingly, but now those stock options that people took, and with the payback, like they're worth hundreds of thousands or more today just for like, you know, sticking around. But at the same time, it was a complete gamble, right? There's far more companies that collapse than ones that like actually make it. So,
Mm,
you know, we had people take decreased salaries. We had some delayed commissions, and we did some like spreading out of money. So let's say someone was supposed to get like 4K on a certain day. Maybe they took 2K, and then a week later they took 2K or something, because you would know when a customer's funds were being transferred. Like maybe it was sitting in Stripe, but it wasn't going to clear for 2 days. Customers always say like, you know, checks in the mail. It's a very
yeah,
like
but
famous
it's
fake thing, whereas like you don't really
yeah,
know it's ever been sent. But sometimes you can actually see it if a wire transfer
yeah,
sent on like a Friday. Maybe it won't hit till Monday. It's just very stressful. I
yeah.
think some people get affected by the stress differently. To me, I can't sleep. I get very anxious. I get very short with people,
Mm-hmm.
and it really impacts my health. I get sick very often. It brings my immune system down.
Mm. You like manage the cash. You still manage to pay the people. You didn't totally not pay anyone. Very difficult period.
I didn't, well, I sort of didn't pay myself. I brought
Especially because
myself
in
down to
US.
minimum wage. You can't like not pay yourself because of the way that PEO
Oh,
health
yourself.
insurance works. You can't
Oh.
bring yourself down to zero if you're part of a like a group employment organization. We technically all work for like a PEO. It's a really common model to get like better health insurance, but like you can't go below minimum wage, otherwise you can't get health insurance. So like a bunch
Mm,
of times I brought myself down to 35K a year in like New York City, like normal wage, and I would have it sit there for like months until we had some money. Then I would like write it back up, and it's tough. It's like it's a real gamble because you like it's like looking at your clock behind you. It's like you can see how long you actually have left until like you really don't have money left, and it's stressful because it makes you treat stuff weird. Like if you have a deal open with a customer, it's very hard to remain level-headed. If a customer asks for a discount, how do you say no or decrease the discount if you know you're facing company death? It's hard.
in this very difficult period, how close do you think you were to bankruptcy?
Yeah, at any given point, payroll is every 2 weeks.
Oh,
So
okay.
for
Okay.
multiple times, we were 2 weeks away from
Two
missing a
weeks away.
payroll. You know, to say a company's bankrupt and to miss a payroll, they're not really the same thing, but like they're quite close. Because after,
Closer.
you know, we would miss one, would we be able to true it up? Would people leave? What would happen? So, we were at least 2 weeks away from missing payroll. That's for sure.
Really? Wow. I was curious. After yesterday's interview, when you spoke about how your friends who are like tech sales, they were making $250,000 a year
or more. Yeah, or a lot more.
So in your case, given that you have really good sales skills, you have really good Salesforce skills, if this didn't work out, you could just go in the job market and make a very good salary. You've also had companies before that have bankrupted. Why did you take this situation especially personal? Is it just your connection to the employees, or is it just you had invested so much time and your personal wealth into the company, and that's why you took this possible bankruptcy, or this situation more personal?
I say it's a good question because I don't really know the answer. I know that part of it was definitely the time. The amount of time I'd put in, it would have felt like failure if I was closing up shop with it. And this one it's a lot harder to get like a product company off the ground, which is why you see all these fundraisings for product companies versus services companies. Services company, you can make money out of the gate. A product company, you work for like a long time before this thing works. And that's why all these VCs are always funding product companies, not funding services companies. But also the economics in the long term, the product company theoretically can grow a lot bigger. I say theoretically because a lot of services companies can throw off a lot of cash too. But anyway, it would have felt like such a tremendous loss to me if it folded. I've never lost a person close to me to like a death, but I'd imagine this is how it would feel, like a death. Now, I don't know the reason behind that, but that's what it felt like as I was going through it.
You were in this very difficult situation and you described it so powerfully. I could feel the pain you were in. Like you went biking, you were talking to psychiatrists, you were taking melatonin, and nothing was working. But you got out of it. And today you have $160 million company. You're making payroll regularly. You have world-class investors. What helped you jump out of this bottom of the barrel? What worked? Or what did you change that helped you get out?
I think what worked was, number one, not giving up, because if you give up, obviously it's not going to work. Also then was finding some kind of focus. So because we focused on building out events based upon feedback from investors, potential investors, no one invested, and from the number of leads that were coming in, it helped to focus just on the events. But no singular thing did it. It was attacking any angle I could come up with at once. We had one customer that prepaid something as far out as we could. We had our payments app was free at the time. We converted it to be paid and asked everybody to pay. We didn't tell them we were about to die. We just said, look, like we have a lot of staff now that's covering this thing and we have to cover our costs, which is true. I don't know why we didn't do that from the beginning, but we got lucky by winning one or two pretty big services projects that kept our IP for this same event building thesis. We had a team that worked their butts off. No one was doing 40-hour, 50-hour weeks. Everybody was at least 60 hours plus. And it wasn't because I told everybody to do that. Everybody was committed and they knew the stakes. They knew even though they weren't staring at the bank account, right? They knew that if a customer wasn't happy, they were going to leave. And they knew that things were really tight and we needed to keep every customer. And this has actually created somewhat of a cultural clash with the current state of our company. Some people that have been here a long time, they're still kind of in the mindset of we have to do everything conceivable versus some newer people who came on. There's a different type of person that's here at like a 5 or 10 person company than at like 100, right? So, if you look at a 10,000 or 20,000 person company, a lot of people aren't checking their email on the weekend. Not that they need to, right? Like that's not the job. But with when the company was early, we had to check our email on the weekend. We had to go through support cases because if a single customer attrited, it could mean missing payroll. This is a different thing. Like there wasn't enough water under the ship. I think just what happened was, number one, I got very lucky. Number two, I tried to play every hand that I was dealt. Like nothing was out of the realm of happening. So every idea that any of us could think of, we went after it in order to get money during that period.
But I'm sure you had considered these different things even before you got to this difficult point. But there must have been something that, or maybe this difficult circumstance forced you to try things that you didn't consider before. Were you forced to do things that you didn't want to do before, or you were lazy to do?
I don't remember, what's that movie called where the airplane crashes in like Argentina and they eat the people, they eat the other passengers that die. Like
Lord of the Flies.
no, but it was something like that. Where the point is, when you're about to reach the end, I think nothing is off the table. You know, as long as it's not illegal, right? So any legal path becomes a possibility. So just really any single thing we could think of, we did it. You know, if something was going to cause a detriment to the company, it didn't matter, because if the company couldn't figure something out, it disappeared. So there was full stakes. You know, there was no downside of messing up, because it was about the light was about to be shut off.
When I was preparing the question about what you did different to help the company get out, I would thought you would say something like you started going to the church or synagogue, or you went on a vipassana and you had some revelations, or you had a Tony Robbins coaching class and he told you to do this.
I think what happened was having a lot of conversations with a lot of people and constantly trying to come up with ideas. If everything you're currently doing isn't working, then clearly you need to change everything that you're doing. So it was like we were building too many apps, so we killed them. We had a free app, so we made it paid. We had customers on monthly. We asked them to do annual at a discount. We had some potential services projects we're going to take on, so we took them. And there was also something I thought that would have killed the company. We had like a 50K deal in front of us, and the money would have drastically helped us for like 2 months. But I knew if we took the deal, it would have bankrupted us, because there's no way we could have built what that customer was asking for within a year. It just never would have happened. And it was really hard to say no, because it was money that we really needed. I had been on site with the customer. I had at least 20 calls with the customer. We did demo images and full like solution write-up of everything we were going to do. And I got there and I thought, you know, if we do this, we're going to be dead. So, you know, I don't know, just took a lot of risks and tried everything we could try to do. I mean, I can't say everything's completely working today yet either, right? It's not like we're throwing off millions of dollars in profit every year. And until a company starts doing that, the model isn't proven. Now, granted, Salesforce, they were in business, you know, 22, 23 years until they started to do that. And they only did it because they laid off so many people. They went after growth. So they, you know, we're now going after, we're in like a hybrid of going after growth and being profitable, right? So we're a few months away from being this profitable state. That's why companies raise or take on these debt facilities so they can accelerate that ahead of time. So things are going in a normal trajectory, but it's, you know, it's still a model that is getting there. So all companies do this. They take on some liability till they can accelerate whatever it is they're working on, and then they start to produce. So, you know, even back then, it wasn't as different as it is now, except now we have a lot more water under the boat, right? There's a bunch of money in the bank. There's a lot of IP. There's a lot of customers. We have like a really awesome team. So
reflecting on this experience, what lessons have you learned about resilience and managing difficult situations? So let's say again, in a similar situation, let's say the economy goes really down, like the Federal Reserve keeps increasing the rate and the 10-year rate becomes like 7%, and then a lot of companies start contracting, and then you're not able to meet payroll. How would you tackle this situation differently?
There's a lot of levers that you can pull once you're further along as a company. Earlier on, there's really not, but later on there is. So we could always sell more of the company, which is the same as, you know, raising money, right? So you end up raising at a lower valuation because things are a bit more dire. You don't really have any leverage, but we could always sell more of the company. You can obviously let go of employees, but that if you think of it as without emotion, then it helps the business to survive. But and it also will kind of force you to be more efficient, but it really slows down growth because there's people are on your team for a reason. They're helping you build it. With the emotion aspect, I know a lot of these people personally, not everybody, but I know a lot of them, and I wouldn't want them to be without a job. You know, it's their livelihood. They have families and so forth, right? But there's always that option. But other things that we have done, salary reductions. So my salary has drastically fluctuated throughout the years. Same with our leadership and management. Like even a year and a half ago or something, we did like a management salary decrease of like 10% or something until we had some levels like come pick back up. Not because we were going to miss a payroll, but we wanted to right size a lot of where the financials were. And then we ended up paying everybody back for that. Further back in the company's history, when we had like 25 or 30 people, we did a across the board salary reduction of like 10% or something. That helped. So you can always pull that. Then you can go after customers and say, would you be interested in paying for, you know, your renewal upfront now and extending it in return for a discount, right? If customers are really happy with the app, it's part of their infrastructure, then they might be willing to pay ahead if they have extra money, right? So a lot of smaller customers don't tend to have extra money. The bigger ones often do. So you can say, hey, would you want to pay for a year early or 2 years upfront in exchange for 5 or 10% discount or something like this, right? There's another way that we could do more of a debt facility. So we have these current debt providers. Maybe they would want to do additional debt or something, right? But sometimes it gets hard. So if the economy got really, really bad and there was mass attrition, then you just have to look at your biggest expenses and like what's going to change. Like there's nothing unique about our company versus any company. If other companies faced all of their customers leaving, you just no longer have money to pay anyone, right? There's very few companies that are sitting on really a lot of excess of cash. Only some of the biggest companies in the world. All the smallest ones, they don't have that. That's why in 2008 things got really tough. So if things, you know, got worse, right? Things are already like kind of slow. Customers are delaying purchasing decisions. People are still buying, but they take many months. Like our time to buy has doubled. I forget the exact numbers, but it went from like
Really?
50 or 60 days to like 100 or 120 days, something like this. So there's still as much interest in the applications, but there's a lot longer path to evaluation. It has to go before CFO, then there's multiple approvals besides that, and there's a longer process to like evaluate different apps. And I mean that's been pretty common. I've talked to a lot of founders, and that's more or less what's happening. But you know, if interest rates go, you know, another 1 or 2 points, I think it doesn't really change too much. But if they like double from here, things could get really tight across certain industries. So we've already weathered a lot of storms, right? So we know a lot of the levers we can pull, and people have been in our company a long time. They kind of know and see it. I don't know. That's something. And then for the team, we recently gave out even more stock options to everybody. So I think within the company, it's like 15 or 16% of the company is owned by employees. So I mean, there's it. You know, money later is not the same as money today, but it's something. You know, if they're going to sacrifice, at least they have something for later too. It helps with the ownership, I think.
Have you implemented any changes in your work, in your life or work habits, so that you're more stress resistant? Like, did you start taking ice baths, or like 1 day fasting, or ayahuasca retreats, or anything?
No,
Started doing
nothing,
nothing.
nothing. I haven't had alcohol in like 6 years. In bed every day by 10 p.m. I exercise almost every single day. I have calls with my therapist 4 times a week for there's like different makeups of the calls. They're different structures, but I have a very consistent life. So when there's a wrench, it's like throwing a wrench at a wall almost. If my life was more erratic, then it would be harder to take it off balance, I guess I would say.
I remember still your points about how you mentioned that to help you manage stress better, you just make sure you go to bed early. Like on New Year, you don't stay up till midnight. you don't drink alcohol, and I think you very basic things that made me think, man, if these basic things are working for you, that means they probably would work for us as well. We just don't notice them as much because we're not as sensitive. It made me more conscious about like
It
going to bed
matters.
early.
Another one that helps too is not traveling. It's very cheap to travel now relative to 50, 100 years ago, and
Yep.
humans are not used to constantly traveling. It's disrupting sleep and psyche. It does something that's destabilizing. This changed a lot for me during COVID. I mean, obviously it was very hard to travel during COVID, but I really enjoyed it. So when I couldn't travel, it actually helped me be a lot more stable. So now I try to not travel as much as possible.
Can you share any advice or insights for individuals who were in a similar situation as you in September 2018, who are facing a payroll crunch uh, and some of the other difficulties you're facing?
This I think was the first thing that came to mind is don't do it alone.
Mm.
Don't necessarily tell your employees, because if you tell all of your employees without some plan, they're really, really going to panic. And if they wanted to be an entrepreneur, they might have been one already. So like, see if you could figure out something before telling them something. And the something doesn't have to take weeks. Like it might just take a day or two, but find someone to go over stuff with. Find like a local entrepreneurship group that you can talk to exited founders or other founders that have been through things that are similar. And also find a therapist, because a lot of times what I've been up to is just more facing my past, where however my parents were interacting with me, it was how I was approaching a situation. It made me panic when I didn't need to. It made me aggressive when I didn't have to be. Like there's a lot of things that are against a person based upon how they were raised that they might not see. So that's where the therapist could help. And where other founders can help is like tactical advice. So like, what are the specifics that you're facing, and what are the ideas that you could change them? Because it helps a lot to just have somebody act as mirrors. And those two things 100% will
Mm.
work every time.
The first item you mentioned is don't do it alone. Be in a group of like peers who can advise you and you can
Mhm.
brainstorm. And but you didn't have that kind of support, right?
Ish. So
Some,
in the launch group that I was in, I was talking to
ah,
people that were helping. There was a guy who was running it at the time. His name was Jason Demont. He really helped when I was going over scenarios with him. I was talking to some of the other founders at the time, but like it was hard because they were deep in their own problems, and they also were kind of early. I didn't have a network of founders that were a bit further along. I'm now in a founders group in New York City. There's almost 270 of us, and it really helps to come up with ideas.
mm.
But yeah, at the time, I didn't really have that, and I wish I did.
So let's say someone that is an early stage founder, like you were in September 2018. How big was your revenue? Like a million?
Well, we had product and services revenue. So our product revenue was like 300K, and our services revenue oscillated between 400 and 800K a year. So on an
Okay.
annual basis, we were a million, but it was like super crest and trough. So it wasn't like a linear million coming in.
So if someone has a company that's bringing in $1 million, where can they find these kind of groups that they can get peer support? Is it on Facebook, or are there like paid membership groups? Are there any place you would suggest that they look?
I mean, if you're in the New York City area, the group that we're in, we charge $60 a year just to cover our expenses. There's no like cost or anything, but we have a lot of in-person events, and we're starting to sponsor dinners and stuff like that. The whole thing's over WhatsApp, and it's Founders Club NY is the group. I think we have .org or something. But pretty much every area that I've seen has some kind of tech hub. Like in almost every country and every major city that I've seen has something.
So the keywords to use are Founder Club. Is that how to Google for it?
Yeah, ours is foundersclubny.org, but You can also LinkedIn message me if you have something. Just send me a whole lot of bullet points, like everything that you can muster, and I'll see if I can come up with some random ideas to get you thinking about something differently.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I'm just thinking for other people who are around the US, how can they find these kind of clubs?
In the US is
These,
frankly pretty easy. I think if
oh,
you
really?
can't find one, yeah, I think if you can't find one in the US, like you probably shouldn't be a tech founder. You really have a problem like Googling something. I think if you're in other countries where you're not
Mm,
living near a big hub, then you might have a problem. If you're trying to do
mm,
something remotely where there isn't a big city near you, then it's probably going to be hard. But pretty much every US city has at least some group of people that you can reach out to. If you look at like the even like the Salesforce community groups, there's tons of those things now.
The second thing you mentioned is talking to a therapist. Do you recommend it for everybody or just people who have bipolar disorder?
I think of it as accelerated learning. If you can talk to someone that's I don't mean like a 30 or 40-year-old therapist. I mean like someone who's older, like 60, 65, 70 years old, someone that's like really, really seen a lot. And their whole life, all they've done is analysis of situations that people are in to better understand what's happening. It's like looking in a crystal ball. Like doing the work sucks. It's really, really painful to go through therapy, but it really helps to understand the emotion that's being felt addressing an issue. A therapist is like the United States popular way to do that. If other people have another route to figuring that out, great. But it's not going to come through something like meditation, right? Like that might help
Really?
you. Meditation is going to help to quiet the mind, maybe make you feel a bit more calm, look at something a bit more stably, help you think a bit clearer, right? But it's not going to help these guttural reactions that you'll feel towards something. You won't understand where the feeling's coming from. I was doing meditation for years and loved it. It really, really helped. I would say if you're into meditation, then keep doing it. This is great. But it's not the same as talking to a therapist. And likewise, if you're only
Mm,
seeing a therapist and have never done meditation, you should also do meditation. This really helps to being able to think a lot clearer and quiet the mind. If I'm on like an obsessive thinking loop, I'm not breaking out of that on my own through meditation. Like, no way. This is not, I was never able to do it. Maybe some people can, but I couldn't. But a therapist has been able to help me understand what I might be obsessively thinking over.
I've never been to a therapist, and I don't know how many people go to therapists, but would you mind speaking about how much does it cost to see a therapist for like for 1 hour? Or do you buy a package like bulk price? And how does this, if I want to see a therapist, what do I do? Do I just call up a bunch and then see which one I like and just subscribe to their services?
It varies pretty wildly. COVID helped to accelerate all of the web platform based therapists. So now it's like really quite easy to find a therapist.
Oh, really?
If you just give it a Google like online therapist or something, then it's pretty easy. If you work for a company and you have health insurance, then there's going to be some degree of covering psychotherapy. Now, if they cover 50% to 90%, or you have a different deductible, it's a different story. But generally, you'll be able to find like an in-network therapist. If you have something like Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna or whatever it is, usually there's
Yep.
a portal of those providers you can log into that will say therapists in your area or what their specialty is. Right now, there's different types of therapy. You could see a social worker or someone that's a trained therapist in a specific type of thing. I personally think it doesn't matter too much, but what does matter is who you end up with. You're not friends with every person in the world. One person can't work at every company in the world. There's different cultures. There's different personality styles. So my recommendation would be to, if you're looking for someone initially, talk to at least like 4 or 5, at least.
Mm,
Because when you find a therapist that is working with, you're going to talk to them for years. And it's going to take them a while to really understand you. And you don't want to talk to somebody that like doesn't get you. So my mom took me to a therapist when I was 10, and I saw her for like 3 years, and then I didn't see anyone for a long time. And then I went back to my therapist like 8 years ago, and she's 80 years old now. So she's a bit annoying in how she charges money. She doesn't take anyone's insurance. She takes it's like out of pocket insurance. So first I have to meet the deductible, and then it's out of pocket. It's super annoying and is it's very expensive and it's very annoying. However, she's excellent, and I think if there was a top 3 amount of reasons, she's a top 3 reason that I'm still sitting here and running the company. Maybe the number
Really?
1 reason. Maybe the number 1. It's really important. Like there were a lot of times I wanted to quit, and her advice was just keep saying like wait and see, because like I ran a trail half marathon on Saturday. And a lot of times, running on a trail or hiking, you don't know where the next turn's going to be until you get there. You can't see over the ridge. There might be a little marker behind a tree, behind a leaf. And with the company, each day that went by, something else unfolded. Granted, sometimes we got worse news, but another path would generally open with each day or each hour that went by, and some kind of new option would happen. And she would say, if you want to quit, you just quit. Just email everyone, tell them you quit, and start wrapping it up. It's the same with any relationship that someone's in, with your significant other or with a friend. If you want to quit, you just quit. There isn't some like long thing you have to do. So I mean, she really helped me to understand. Look, she's not like a business tactician, right? Like she's not going to give me advice on like how to do a debt facility or something, but she's going to help me understand at least what I'm feeling going into it. And I'm very feelings driven, so it really helped me a lot.
So she's like your coach, motivator. She tells you keep going, you can do it.
She never said you can do it. She's not my motivator, and she's not a coach. She's none of those things. But she did help me to see it more objectively, and try to remove the emotion from it by helping me to understand my emotions.
Do you think a lot of CEOs like you see a therapist, but they just don't talk about it?
I know a lot of CEOs see a therapist.
Do you think Elon Musk has a therapist?
Actually, in the Walter Isaacson book, he talks about how he went to see a therapist like once, or he thought about it, one of those two, and he's like, I'm not doing this again. So, I don't know what he's currently doing, or I don't know what the reality is, but I highly doubt that's what he's doing, just based upon some of the maneuvers that he makes. But I think really a lot of people see a therapist and don't talk about it because it has a stigmatism of shame behind it. It's very stigmatized of something's wrong with you if you see a therapist. And
I thought therapy is for weak people.
Exactly.
You're a leader. 100 people look up to you. There you are talking to an 88-year-old lady for.
Yeah, I mean, for me, understanding my childhood has been really hard. I'm over 1,000 sessions into talking with her, and almost every time I still am getting some insight that I didn't get before. If I told myself this like a decade ago, I'd say like, you're insane, but it's true. It's what's still happening.
Do you think you will keep seeing her until you retire?
I'll probably keep seeing her until she dies.
She dies. Wow. I hope she lives for a long time.
Me too.
Keep supporting you.
She's a pain, but she's really helpful. So I hope she does too.
So interesting that like this 80-year-old lady can actually help you, because like my dad is almost 70 years old, but I don't feel like it's difficult for me to talk to him. And like, because we're so different, like he doesn't know a lot about technology, and the world he grew up in was during Soviet Union. And but a 8-year-old person here giving you support and like helping you.
Look, think of it as science. Science? If you have an extra like plot of land next to your house, right? Even if it's like 20 feet by 20 feet, if you want to figure out how you're going to grow a crop in there, like you're not going to go ask your car mechanic. This wouldn't make any sense. You're going to go read like a gardening or a farming book or something, right? If you want to understand yourself, you're not going to go ask someone that didn't have the training in it. They're only going to have their own experiences, right? So I made this company. I have experience doing B2B apps on Salesforce. I've never made a physical product. I wouldn't go ask myself for advice on making a physical product. So with therapy, my therapist, Donna, this is all she did. She's been practicing 50 years. She's heard everything. If you ask me to build a data model today versus the day we started this company, my ideas now are based upon all the times I've messed up. And back then it was just based on thesis. I didn't know what was going to work and what wasn't going to work.
I see. So she has talked to a lot of people, and that's why she can help you, because she can relate. And
she has 100 patients for 50 years. And you see that many per week?
I see. I see.
You've seen everything.
Just sometimes I think, like Kanye West says, he likes to get advice only from people who are younger than him because they know the future. And so I have like age bias. I'm like, what can older people, they've seen a different age, different.
There's a
things
reason that
with me.
history books exist. If you can read history, then you'll understand what's coming next. Now, granted, Kanye does a lot of things out of like Elon's concept. Well, it's not, he doesn't own it, but he popularized it of first principles, right? Kanye does a lot of things that are the first things out of the gate, but he's also done some things like it's like some of his interviews and some of his stances have gotten him really, really in a lot of trouble. Now, it's either to get more popular or it's something that he really couldn't see. And if he, read some history, then maybe it could have been avoided. I more so think it was he kind of didn't care about the repercussion and it helped him like get very popular, which it did. But a lot of his music is very original. And if you look to a younger generation for that, then that certainly helps. And yeah, older generation is not necessarily going to help you make like first principles music. It's different, but people are not psychologically so much different now than they were 2,000 years ago. It's the same thing. Genetics don't change that fast.
Fascinating. Chris, thank you so much for, first of all, writing your LinkedIn post. It's an inspiration for me. Whenever I feel difficult and like, I think, wow, even amazing Chris, like powerful Chris had this difficult time, but he persevered and now he has a big company. And I think a lot of people loved your post, and please keep writing more LinkedIn posts. And you're an amazing writer. I think I love your writing. It's so easy to understand, to follow your thoughts. And
thank you, Say. This is very kind of you to say. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your time in this interview to go back. And I know it's not pleasant to go back to this moment, but it is amazing how you overcome the situation and persevere and won. I hope you keep winning, and I hope to read more great news about your and Blackthorn's achievements.
Well, thank you. This is very nice things for you to say. Thank you.